G'day there. Welcome to another Isolated Bass series. It's been a while, I know. We've been in full-on lockdown here in Melbourne for the last few weeks, and I've just been hiding away recording bass tracks for some of my friends, for Steve Romick and Jeff Atchison, and learning how to use Final Cut Pro. I'm getting better at it. But today I have my beautiful 74 jazz bass out, which is the very bass I played on the Little River Band albums. And of course, I'm revisiting a song from the second album, and the song is called Days on the Road. And can you believe it? I've got Mr. Graeham Goble waiting on the Zoom call for me, and we're going to discuss the song. So let's check out the Zoom call and see what he has to say about this classic song. Graeham, welcome. Finally, I get to chat to you. So welcome to my Isolated Bass series. You know, it's wonderful to have you on board.
Thank you, Roger. I've watched two or three, and maybe, I don't know if you've done maybe four. I love what you're doing. I think you're a natural with this, and I'm honoured to do it, and I hope we'll do more of these. And I think you can do a lot more of these. They're very entertaining and enjoyable to watch, and hopefully this one will be as well.
Well, I'm sure it'll be very successful, you know, due to the nature of my guest today, you know. I'm not blowing smoke, you know, but the reality is, Graeham, that you were probably one of the, you probably sit at the top of the pile, but you're definitely one of Australia, if not the world's celebrated songwriters. You know, some of the awards that you've received. I know, I mean, it's how we measure success, awards, but the reality is that, you know, your songs like Reminiscing, Lady, and a couple of others have had amazing million. What are the awards they call in America?
The awards for there's five of them, which all went top 10 in America. There was Reminiscing, Lady, Take It Easy on Me,
yes, Take It Easy,
The Night Owls, and The Other Guy, and they've all had more than 1 million airplays on commercial radio. Yeah. So when you look at that, if you realise that even one play on a radio station could be listened to 3 or 4 million people, you see. So, when you extrapolate that out, when you look at Reminiscings, it's actually had 5.6 million plays now. So it's really it's quite extraordinary, and that our songs, but not, I mean, with the Little River Band songs, I've had 5 of them, but Glenn Shorrock with Cool Change has had 2 million plays, and David Briggs with Lonesome Losers had 3 million plays. So it's really hard to think of somebody or some other band that maybe have gotten to that sort of saturation of airplay in the United States. It's been extraordinary.
Well, you know, I'm sure you're up there with the Beatles and Paul McCartney, dare I say.
I wouldn't go so far as to say that. I think, I mean, what are the Beatles? 36 number ones. I mean, they're in a whole league of their own, and a song like Yesterday's had many more million plays than Reminiscing. But it's certainly comparable to a song like Imagine. It's about that sort of level, and I guess, from an Australian songwriting point of view,
well, that's
I think that Reminiscing and Lady are the two most played Australian songs on American radio, and I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah, and not only that, I think a sign of a great song, and it must be a huge compliment to you, that people want to cover your songs and record them. To me, that must be the ultimate, you know.
Yeah, well, that is the ultimate. I mean, this year, I think it was earlier this year, there was a flautist, however you say it, had a jazz charting version of Reminiscing, and I sent her a nice note, and I thought, wow, it's awesome that a jazz artist would pick it up and do it, and it actually charted on the Billboard Jazz chart. So I thought, wow, it's awesome. Yeah.
Well, oops, I should put my phone on silent. I think that's the mark of a great song, that you can listen to it and people go, wow, I could do this song in a jazz form. I mean, take John Farnham's You're the Voice, for instance. You can actually do that as a really cool swing song.
Well, any
Yeah,
good song, you should be able to do that. In
yeah, a
fact,
great song.
Katie Lang did an awesome country version of Reminiscing. I really loved that. It was
Yeah.
fantastic, yes.
And I've heard kind of like who was that band that did Reminiscing? They did a real kind of funky
Yeah, it was
hip hop, almost hip
Madison
hop,
Avenue. Madison Avenue, was it?
something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, they had a big hit with it,
they
and
did.
I thought that I was hoping that it was going to be released in America, but they didn't release it in America,
Okay.
unfortunately, because I think it could have had a second uh, shot at going to number one in America had Madison Avenue
Yeah,
version, because it was a really good version.
yeah. Well, look, there's so much to talk about. I'm going to just try and narrow it down to one song today. So today
Yeah.
we're going to talk about Days on the Road, which was the opening cut on the second LRB album to be released in Australia, which was called After Hours. That's the one with the owl on the front.
Yeah.
And I think that Derek Pellicci came up with that title, After Hours.
Well, Derek probably did because he
Yeah,
came up with a lot of our titles.
yeah.
Yeah, no,
So,
I agree with
yeah,
that.
so Days on the Road. So I guess the first thing I would ask you, Graeham, about this song is uh, where did you write it? When did you write it? And yeah, how, when, and why? Days on the Road. So over to you, Graeham.
Well, as we were going to, I knew that we were going to do this. I looked up the date, and it was written in 1974, and of course, in October, it's actually August and October 74. I would have probably written the verse part in August and maybe the middle part in October. But interestingly, that was like Beeb, Derek, and I had gone to London in 1974 with the band Mississippi,
Yes, yes, of
and
course.
we only really lasted 3 weeks. We ran out of money. The band broke up, and so we hadn't at that point didn't really know what to do. And I was well, not flatting. I was living in a house with Beeb in Worcester Park in London, and we had not met Glenn. And the lyric for this song is really about, well, I've just been on tour with Mississippi for 3-4 years, and my band's prior to all that. Is this it? Like, when you look at the lyric, it's sort of like talking about the end of a career.
Yes.
And I didn't know I was weeks away from meeting and singing with Glenn Shorrock for the first time, or Beeb and I doing that. And suddenly then in late 74, laying plans to come back to Australia and put Little River Band together. Well, it was still going to be called Mississippi at that point, but then plans changed. But this lyric is about remembering all of the endless miles on the road
Yeah.
with Mississippi, doing gigs all around Australia, going across the Nullarbor before it was a sealed road, in the back of a truck, sleeping on a mattress, 6 of us.
Oof.
We actually had a dog at some point with us that was just farting the whole way, and it was just in the back of this truck with no ventilation.
Oh, nice.
We broke a windscreen going across the Nullarbor at about 2 in the
Yeah.
morning, like it was about
Wow.
0 degrees. Incredible things to talk about now, but unbelievable things that we went through. I mean, and when I say in the lyric how I almost died there, well, there were many cases that could have happened.
Yeah.
One in particular was we did a gig as you do in, say, Geelong. The next night we had to play in Adelaide, so you just get in the car and you drive, what, 8-10 hours overnight to
The
Adelaide.
overnighter after a gig. It was
No
stupid,
sleep,
but we did it. Yeah.
no sleep, and
Kind of had
uh,
to do it, didn't you, to
you
get to
had
the
to do
next
it
gig?
because you couldn't go on we couldn't afford to fly anything. We had to drive over,
Yeah. Yeah.
and about 6:30 in the morning, I woke up on the wrong side of the road with a
Oh,
semi bearing down on us,
yeah.
and I just got such a fright. I pulled off, and I said to Derek, who was with me, you better drive into Adelaide because I'm just so tired I can't stay awake anymore.
Did
And he said, well, I don't have a license. And I said, well, it doesn't matter. I can't drive. So he drove without a license into Adelaide.
yeah.
But I tell you what, 10 more seconds and I wouldn't be here
Yeah.
because
Now,
we were gone.
was Derek awake? Was he snoozing when that happened?
Don't know. I can't remember.
Yeah.
When we pulled off into the side, into the bush, and possibly he woke up there. I don't know. He probably was sleeping because
Yeah.
I was absolutely out to it. That was just one of a few incidences, and I know that you've had these sorts of things. All of
Yeah.
the bands of those 70s, as I say, there was just it was just constantly on the road to the next gig, to the next gig.
Well, we've
And
lost a lot of great musicians and roadies on the road. And, Johnny O'Keefe, that horrendous accident he had,
yeah,
doing overnighters. Yeah. So,
so therefore, the song "Days on the Road," when it all sort of we went to London, and the idea that Beeb and Derek and myself had about going to London and then from there trying to break America, because America was always the thing, but no band had ever actually gone to London and then broke America. I don't know why we thought we could, because there were plenty before us that tried,
that's right. Yeah.
including the Easy Beats and the whole lot.
Yeah.
Um, but I thought, well, for the first time in my life, I guess, I thought maybe this is it. Or I don't know that I ever actually thought that. Maybe I just thought, well, I've just got no plan, because I always felt the thing that eventually happened for Little River Band would eventuate. I felt that from a young age, probably 15 or 16. I felt that, and so I put all those thoughts down into this song. And when I was revisiting the lyric, it was talking about that, but it was
Yeah.
talking about my realization of, well, all the rip-offs that we had as a touring band, but
Yeah.
also all the wonderful people that I'd met. And I came to a realization that the colleagues and band members that I'd experienced band life with were important to me, and they were part of my journey, my life.
Mm.
And even though we didn't necessarily hang out a lot or get on great back in the day, I did value. I realised wherever I was in '74 in London, sitting in that place, I wouldn't have been there without all of the people that had got onto the journey that I was trying to
Yeah.
get going on when I was very young. So
Yeah. Well,
that's what happened.
it is. It's as you said, it's almost a song that's been written in reflection after a career. I remember the days on the road. It's like you've had this incredible journey, but you've got to remember that you were pretty busy with songwriting from the day you started playing piano, or even your first guitar. I mean, I love discovering on your Spotify channel a band called The Silence. I mean, those songs are just amazing. As I said to you when I heard them, it was like discovering a long lost Hollies or Beatles demo tape.
Well, I started that The Silence was a band that I formed with friends from school, and
Wow.
it coincided with, I saw this guy playing banjo on TV, and I thought I'd like to learn banjo. So I went and did some banjo lessons. But banjo shapes are different than guitar shapes,
Yes, yeah, totally.
and I learned recently that John Lennon actually started with banjo too. He was playing banjo shapes, but I wasn't that proficient as an instrumentalist. But as soon as I had a string instrument in my hand, I was writing all these songs. And about 7 a week, to be honest, when I was about 14 or 15. And that was all I ever wanted to do. I had no social life. I just wanted to be in my room writing songs
Yeah.
24/7. That's what I did. I'd go to work, come home, spend all night writing songs, all weekend writing songs. And then when I had all these songs, I got some friends from school and we put this down. And that's the Silence
Yeah.
record that you've heard, and it's very much of the time in the '60s.
Oh, absolutely it is. But that's what's so great about
Yeah,
it.
we recorded all in one day. 17
Yeah.
songs, I think, we recorded in one day, and of course it was also fueled by this girl in Adelaide that I met, who actually I wrote all my early songs about, but actually wrote probably the majority of the next 30 years of love songs about. So she was my muse, I like to say. And even though we never had a relationship or it just didn't eventuate, but she was a very important part of my inspiration. So I had this need in me for expressing how I was feeling as a teenager, and that's what happened.
It's interesting that, I discovered the Beatles obviously in '63, and I was 9 years old, and I was already playing ukulele. So, while you were discovering music and learning banjo, you were writing creating your own songs. I was busy learning Beatles songs and had my own kind of Beatles cover band by the time I was 11 years old.
Well,
similar.
We did a bit of, sorry, go. Right.
I would say it was a similar thing. We're all learning our craft, as you say, working out shapes. And I guess what I'm saying is, as soon as I had a stringed instrument in my hand, I wanted to play and discover songs. Whereas you were actually writing them, I was discovering it through the Beatles and learning the pop songs and working out the shapes on ukuleles and guitars.
Yes. Well, when I first started, it was just that, and then when I was 16 or 17, there was this guy at work. I used to work for the Public Buildings Department in Adelaide, and there was this, in the 1 week, I was introduced to Bob Dylan and Sinatra. I mean, what a diverse thing. I'd never heard of either of these. And then, of course, right around that time, the Beatles were hitting in the mid to late 60s. So what I was interested in with Dylan was the songwriting. You see, I mean, I'm really a songwriter. I'm a musician, if you like, by default. But I'm a songwriter first of all, and my great love are songs and how they can inform your life, how they can they tell it like it is. I mean, really, it's just the songs of the world are where all the history and all the emotion and all the people's stories are. I mean, even from the slaves in America, it all travelled through the songs that they brought with them from their ancestry, I guess. And so
Absolutely.
To me, the thing I loved about Sinatra, apart from his voice, and Dylan, were the songs that they were singing, you see. So then I got into things like when I formed the band, I think it might have been Alison Gross, we did things like we learnt Abbey Road Side 2, and we used to play that in the pubs. You learn the whole thing.
Yep.
And of course, that was a great education, because to learn and sing, like we were doing things like Because and all those incredible harmonies, I would just could hear it all and just tell the guys what they needed to play and sing, because I had good ears. And that's where, if you like, what I call the science of songwriting and I've been self-educated in understanding, because when you listen to a record, you know, okay, they're doing that. I didn't know what it was called. I couldn't say, well, that was an F flat major 7, or I didn't know any of that.
Yeah, or a series of stacked fourths with the add 9 and a 13.
Knew nothing about that. But what I did know was what I could hear in my head, which started. So the songs that I started to write were what I was hearing in my head. I could hear finished pieces for the most part, and particularly when I got into my 20s and 30s, like a song like Reminiscing was simply just entered my body and my brain, and I could just hear it and I didn't need to pick up a guitar or anything. I could just hear the song. And so that's what happened. But that developed over about probably 10 or 20 years of just spending my whole life, even if I'm at a dinner party, I'm thinking of songs. I mean, I'm not engaging. I'm actually hearing melodies. Yes.
I do the same thing. People are talking to me and I know I've vagued out because or my worst conversations in the middle, or I'm watching a movie and my ears hear something in the soundtrack of the movie, and particularly if I've got headphones on late at night, I go, oh, that music's fantastic. And I realise for the last 10 minutes, I've just been listening to the soundtrack and I've had to wind back to listen to the dialogue because I've been totally sidetracked.
No, exactly, and it's a wonderful thing, really. It's a personal thing, but it's it's just like I've written lots of songs just listening to the dialogue of a movie, for instance.
Well, of course, yeah, I've
And,
heard a lot of songwriters say that it might be one little phrase that will bring on that rush of creativity.
well, I'll tell you a quick one. My song "Mistress of Mine." I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Well, we were on tour somewhere, and there was a Humphrey Bogart movie playing, and I just come into the hotel room, put the TV on, the Humphrey Bogart movie, and he was on this. I've been still trying to find this movie, by the way, if anyone knows what it could be. But he was on a balcony in the jungle with this probably Greta Garbo or someone, and
yeah.
she said to him something like, "I love you, da 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 da," whatever. And his response was something like, "You don't feel that way, or you don't love me. It's just the heat of the night and the dance of the fireflies that's making you feel that way."
Oh, no, yes,
And
yeah.
so then I changed that around. She's there like the heat. She dances like the fireflies. And that was my opening line for Mistress of Mine. And that's once you've got that opening line, then
Yes,
you've got a song.
yeah.
So I was just strumming those sort of Spanishy sort of guitars, sitting on the bed, listening to the dialogue. And when the whole movie was finished, I had finished the song Mistress of Mine, which was written, if you like, myself as a character as Humphrey Bogart in the movie, in this situation with this woman, and I turned that into a song. And that's just what you were saying, of being able to go inside yourself and just imagine yourself in a situation. But ultimately, it's still about you, because even though that was inspired by the Humphrey Bogart movie, I was still writing about my girl in Adelaide that I never ever was able to have a relationship with.
Right. So would it be fair to say that most of your songs, not most, but a good majority of them, are actually in some ways autobiographical? I can't say the word.
Autobiographical.
Biographical, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
They are. And even the love songs, definitely. But even the other sort of songs that I write, like the rock songs or the more not political is not the right word. What's the other word I'm looking for? Just talking about what's going on in the world.
Observing something.
Yeah. Well, just the state of the world. I mean, I care deeply about all that. I'm not out there waving placards and things, but I see how off track the whole world is heading.
Oh, we are totally out of kilter at the moment. Yeah.
Yes, and I've written a lot of lyrics trying to put that concern between the lines, and one of my songs called "Time and Eternity," which
it's a great song, Graeme. That's off the Stop album, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and it's got some great. It's not all in four, it's got some.
Yeah, that's what I love about it.
But there's a line in there says that we're going as fast as the slowest one in our race, and I love that line because it says that we're in lockdown in Melbourne because of the element in society that can't really see the importance of playing to the rules and wearing their mask or isolating themselves. So if everybody did the right thing, then we wouldn't be in lockdown.
That's right.
But we are in a human race together. It's fantasy to think that won't happen. So they are our brothers and our sisters, and the world can get through this virus, or it can advance as fast as the slowest person can advance.
Yeah.
You see, that's what welfare is all about. That's why we need to support people that have lost their jobs and
absolutely, yeah.
Because if we just only cater to the big end of town, there will be a revolution, because it's really the little people, if I may call anybody that are the important people, because that's the measure of where we are.
Yeah. And sometimes it's not their fault that they find themselves destitute or homeless. There's usually a terrible, maybe a very sad tale of abuse or whatever, that they've ended up in that situation.
But it's our responsibility to help everyone.
It is.
And it's the selfishness of humanity that creates where we are at the moment. I mean, if you could say one thing about the coronavirus, you could say the selfishness of humanity has brought this upon ourselves.
Yeah.
And we have to all put our hand up for it. And so what do? We can't just say, well, I'm okay, who cares? I mean, now we're finding that nobody's okay because everybody isn't okay.
Yeah.
And that's the problem.
And I actually said, and it might upset a few people, but I actually said this morning, I was talking to someone, I said, you know, this is the virus, this is the pandemic we had to have.
Absolutely. I totally...
Which is a bit of a weird thing to say, but, you know, it's like, come on, guys, wake up. I mean, it's all pandemic, global warming. I don't want to get in my soapbox now. People are going to call us lefties here. We're in trouble.
Well, I think I like to, I mean, in my life, I've read a lot of Rudolf Steiner, and I quote him a lot. But he says things like that we don't really deserve anything, and that anything we're given in life is just given through grace, basically. In that when you think of the good things that happen to us, they're really often by chance or by some gift that comes. And now, and even the jobs that we have or the money we earn, I mean, even ourselves, you and I as musicians, we don't earn a dime unless someone thinks we're worth something and are willing to put their money towards our art and help us earn a living. So that happens through the grace of another person, or you can say the grace of God, or whatever you want to say. But do I deserve anything in this world? Do you deserve anything? No. What have we done to deserve? You see, and so we just try. And so I think that we have to come to that. And so if you accept that, then this coronavirus could be a slap on the wrist for us all to say, well,
absolutely.
Really, there's a lot you need to look at, you as a person, and therefore you as a whole humanity. So anyway, so what I was saying with my songs, those I am deeply concerned about all of that. And so when I write a lyric that's talking about those things, then they're still my thoughts. But I'm careful not to be, I don't want to be on a soapbox and say this is the way it must be. I think the thing is to observe, and this is where Dylan taught me a lot with the times they are a changing and things like that. He said it between the lines, and everyone got it. You know, they weren't threatened by what he said. The authorities were threatened by what he said.
Oh, they were, And
People
he wasn't
weren't
really on his soapbox for waving a finger. It was more observation.
Exactly. And that's the most powerful. And so that's what I try to do with, and even with my observations of romantic love and just relationships, I try and put that in my lyric. So as for those who have ears to hear, it's there. And if you don't want it, then you can just take it as a normal dance song or whatever you want. Because it's not up to me to make anybody believe anything. I just put something there, and if they respond to it, that's wonderful.
Right. Well, look, we're getting off track here, but it's great actually. Let's just talk about life. So getting back to some of the other lyrics I'd like to ask you about. I was born a dream chaser. I kind of get that, I think I was too. Running away from the country that made me. Is that you talking about leaving Australia, or is there a bit more in that?
No, well, I think it is that, because I mean, I've always loved Australia, and even unfortunate that I live here now and always have for a long time, apart from the touring years with Little River Band and the times we went overseas with Mississippi. But
you were born in Adelaide, weren't you?
Born in Adelaide, yes.
Probably about the only person in LRB that was actually born in Australia.
No, I was the only Australian born.
You are, that's right.
But I love, I mean, I still feel that a bit because I love Adelaide so much. I mean,
me too. I want to move there.
I would move there in a heartbeat. But my children are all established here in Melbourne, and I left in 1972, and I have little ties there now. But as a city to live in, that would be my dream. But that's not going to happen. But so that lyric would be. I'm a real homebody. I didn't ever want to even leave Adelaide, but I knew that I had to. I left Adelaide in 72 to go and live in Melbourne. And then I knew I had to go into the world to experience the career that I felt was waiting for me. I had a real sense that what eventuated with Little River Band was really a destiny that I had to go toward. But it wasn't like maybe a lot of other guys in rock and roll where they just couldn't wait to get on the road and do the partying and do all that. It wasn't like that for me at all. It was with some sadness that I stepped onto that path to international rockdom, if that's a word.
Yeah, well, absolutely it is.
Yeah, but I did it, and I thought, and even when I was on stage in America in front of 5,000-10,000 people, it wasn't like I was always thinking, okay, well this is awesome and it's wonderful and it's what I thought would happen.
Yeah.
But really, I'd like to be home in my studio, or like to be home with my family. It's not like
pipe and slippers.
Yeah, exactly.
Reading your favourite book.
Like that. It's not like I want to go to the next club or the next thing. I just would rather be able to have that career, but not have to go outside my house.
Yeah. So I guess that ties into the lyric, and I love this part of the song. The bridge of Days on the Road, where Beeb, out of the blue, comes flying into your face and sings, and I hate it.
Yeah, yeah.
And Harmony, oh, I hate leaving you. Like, wow, is that about Adelaide as well? Or?
It's about the girl in Adelaide, but it's also, about Australia, you see. So it's a dual thing.
Dual thing, yeah. As a lot of lyrics are, yeah. And then after that,
But what more can I do than to try and find my way? Well, that's what I was just explaining there.
Yes.
What was I had this sense that I have no choice. I mean, in my life, I pretty much said yes to everything, but I have no choice. I have to do this because if I don't do this, I'm never going to achieve what I know I'm destined to achieve. I know that what my abilities will be and what it could bring. But if I don't put my own feelings aside and if I'm not willing to walk on the hot coals and go and do it, I'm never going to experience it. So that's what this is. But what more can I do than to try and find my way? So I just do the next thing. So the next thing was meeting Glenn Shorrock and then laying plans to come back to Australia to form Little River Band. And I didn't know what would happen from there, other than I knew there would be an eventual success of some sort there.
Yeah, and I like and the lyric after that, because dynamically the band comes down and then Glenn sings, carry me on to somewhere, and the lilt in his voice, send me someone who will share it all.
Now that's a bit chilling, because I had only been married for say 3 months, and I knew that I wasn't, like, I had such strong feelings for the girl in Adelaide that it took me 30 years to get over her. And even though I was married with my new wife for 3 months, and we ended up staying married for 24 years and had 4 glorious children.
Yeah, and there must have been something there at the beginning.
Well, there wasn't. I just had a sense
of... That's a brave thing to say.
I had a sense of that I needed, this was the relationship that was sent to me that I needed to be involved with. And I think that I eventually fell in love with my wife probably 3-4 years into the marriage.
Yeah.
And then, but it was never really what I wanted, and it wasn't anything like I imagined it may have been.
Wow.
May not have been with my muse in Adelaide. Yeah. So when I'm traveling on the road, and I also was a very committed married person. There were no affairs possible for me, nothing like that. But I think you and I may have talked about this in the past, where everyone I would meet, I would think, are you a possibility to be this person that I'm looking for? Yeah. But I would never act upon it.
You're right.
I never did act upon it, but I would always size a person up and think, oh, you're really cute. We talk great.
I wonder.
If I wasn't married, I would love just to find out. But of course I was married, and I couldn't find out.
You didn't cross that line. Yeah, you're right.
So I wrote about it. You see, write about it for free, but you go and do it, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So I wrote many songs about that possibility of meeting somebody that really I felt this could be magical. Now, I mean, there's another song I wrote, a song called "Please Don't Ask Me," which I wrote for John Farnham.
I was thinking about that song this morning, Graeme, in the shower. Because I'm thinking about knowing we're going to do this interview, and I'm thinking about some of the songs you've written, and I thought, wow, Please Don't Ask Me. That's a powerful song. Beautiful.
Well, I fell deeply for somebody when I was on tour, and I just couldn't go anywhere with it. And that was what I did with my emotion at that time, rather than acting it out. And I decided to write the song and leave it there. But that I could have, a different person might have said, well, okay, you're not that happy over here. What is wrong with trying that? But I had 2 children. It's not just me. At that point, I had 2 children, and I thought, and in the "Please Don't Ask Me" song, which I know that we're not talking about, but I said I could not live the lie it would take to have you near would be a mistake. That's how I felt. I felt, well, okay, it might be nice to have a fling or try and have a relationship with this person. But then when that's done,
it's the guilt. That's what gets me.
You've got to live with it for the rest of your life. How can you do that?
Well, you're right. And I think there's something happens when you do cross that line, when you're committed to someone through marriage and you cross the line. It's just, there's something about, it's like you've just kind of taken the pencil and broken it a little bit. Even though you can glue it back together, you've crossed the line and something happens in the relationship, I think. And I know, look, I'll be truthful, I have crossed that line. And
most people do.
And I'm the one that comes home with guilty stamped across his forehead, It's just, I feel terrible for doing it, It's like I want to run away from the scene of the crime.
But at least you did it. And I think that in my case, I'm sort of, what's the word? I'm conflicted on it, because I feel, well, I chose not to, but then I now have to live with the fact that I will never know, you see. So I decided to stay in something for 24 years that was less than perfect, but then, so I kept that, but then, I mean, interestingly, that after 24 years, my wife left anyway, so it was sort of like, who knows, but I think of all of the possibilities that never were. But I just wasn't the sort of person that could have lived with that sort of anxiety and guilt, I guess. So I just didn't do it.
I don't think you could have. It's not an easy thing to live with sometimes. You kind of reflect. I mean, I was married to my first wife for 40 years, and I'm one of these people that I believe in love at first sight. When the 3 women that I've been emotionally involved with, physically involved with, are women that I've almost met on the spot and go, there's that thing that happens, and you just it's happened with the 3.
Well, you see, I had that with the that's how I was feeling with that person that I'd written "Please Don't Ask Me" about. But it's just, what do you do? I mean, it's there's nothing you can do. You just have to get on the bus and go to the next town. There's nothing you can do. I
mean, luckily the first 2 times it was okay. The third time was a little tricky because we were both married. But
exactly.
And the thing is, it was later in life, and I think we were both mature enough to talk to our partners and go, look, this is what's happened. And it takes a lot of guts to say that, to look someone in the eye, that and go, look, I'm sorry, but I've met someone. And I'm just head over heels. I'm in love with this person, and this is the person I want to spend the rest of my life with. And and to actually have the guts to say that, and luckily my wife actually accepted it really well. The
maturity,
probably because of my honesty.
Yes, and so when as you get older, you see the importance of those things. Those things don't come for nothing. For me, the gift in it was the endless material for songwriting.
Well, it would be in your case, yeah.
Well, the yearning and the longing in my heart and in my soul that was there for most of my life was a condition that enabled me to write my songs. Because if I didn't have that, I would not have written like a line like that. It just wouldn't have even come. You know,
Yeah.
where it says, "Send me someone who will share it all." That wouldn't be there if I had someone that could share it all.
And your, as I've said to you before, the opening line of, what are the great opening lines of classic songs, I mean, John Lennon, help, I need somebody help, a cry for help,
Absolutely, and it's
Whoa.
true. Yeah.
And yours, which I'm sure a lot of people relate to, the opening line of Reminiscing. I mean, it's just such the imagery, when Friday night I was late, I was walking you home, we got down to the gate and I was dreaming of the night, would it turn out right? I mean, we've all felt that emotion,
Well, that was in every Fred Astaire black and white movie of the late 50s and 60s. That's what I grew up on, just the going to the prom with your girl and then walking with the street lamp coming home. And that's the image, and that's I never experienced that in my life. I never went on dates with girls. I never.
I remember that. I think you and I grew up in that time where it was about going to the father and asking permission to take your daughter out. And you better be home by 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
And so you're walking her home, holding hands, your little heart's racing, wondering if you're going to give her the first kiss.
Well, how I would have loved to have experienced that, and when I was growing up, I thought that would be the ultimate experience on this planet, to actually go on a date with a girl like that. I've never ever experienced it, ever.
Wow, Graeham. Well, I got to tell you, it's a wonderful thing. It's nerve-wracking, but it's also incredibly exciting. The energy that runs through your body when I can't believe this conversation we're having.
Absolutely. So my wife that I did marry in '74, we never even actually went on a date.
Wow.
Like I just, I won't get into the story, but basically the day I met her was pretty much the day I asked her to marry me, and she said yes, and I went off on tour and we got married and we ended up going to England. So that was that. So I never experienced the things like, I got a date on Saturday night and we're going to go.
Yeah, I've experienced that. That's why I relate to that opening lyric of Reminiscing, I've been there.
I wrote that out of the fantasy of seeing that occurring in the movie. So it's sort of like, I'm not taking part in this. I'm sitting out here in this bubble that I live in my bedroom mainly, but I see it all in the romantic movies of the day and the black and white movies of the 50s and 60s. So I was able to write about it, and I could see how awesome it was, but it wasn't from my experience. It was from my desire and my fantasy that I could write that.
Yeah, it's like I love the line in one of Shorrock's song, Hollywood, you're in my movie.
Beautiful.
Like, wow.
Very clever.
Yeah. Beautiful. Oh, now look, I wrote a whole lot of notes here.
Yeah, keep going.
I was going to ask you, and we've touched on a lot of it actually. It's been.
You can do part 1 and part 2 if you don't want to put it all up.
Well, look, we'll just keep going. Placing yourself with a person. Yeah, love song. Now that, the science of writing, you've touched on it, but I was going to ask you, when you write a song, is it lyric and melody and chords that come all at once for you, or can it be, or is it another process, or does it vary from song to song? Does it sometimes come from just playing your guitar and thinking, oh, that's a nice chord sequence, I might pop that away for a rainy day?
That usually doesn't happen, the last one. For me, it's mainly melody and lyric. Usually when I hear a melody in my head, it's usually got, or in the past, it's always had a
lyric attached.
A lyric attached to it. Wow. So say if I was writing, we're talking about days on the road, we might be saying, I remember the days on the road trying to get somewhere, all the time spent behind the wheel. That melody and the lyric would would be glued together, so to speak.
Oh, very quickly.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. And with so if I'm listening to what I hear in my head, if it's it's not like I get the words first and then searching for a melody to work that. They come together for the most part.
Yeah.
Whereas, because there are not a lot of people actually write words and music. A lot of people possibly write either these days like the top line or the melody or something. Another person might be just a lyricist. And a lot of the great writers of all time, like Johnny Mercer and those sorts of people.
Well, John, Bernie Taupin.
Yeah.
That's
right. So I can relate to that. And also Burt Bacharach and Hal David, they did it the other way around, I think, where Burt wrote the music and then how David wrote the lyric, whereas the other way with Elton John, Bernie wrote the words, and then I can't relate to either of that.
It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
So I do it all together.
Yeah.
And I've written a few co-writes with Beeb and a couple of people, but it's mainly that I've finished, that they've just handed me over. They couldn't quite finish the song, so they give it to me, and I usually just say, well, this is where the chorus could be.
Yeah.
So I was quite good at, I think where my success has been is that I've always been able to hear a hook. So you do a verse, and then I'm able to either do an explosive middle eight, as I did here in Haze on the Road, or with Reminiscing, Hurry, Don't Be Late, I Can Hardly Wait. That came as when that verse finished. Where does it go? Okay, it goes here. I don't sit down and think, well, where could it possibly go? Should I do this chord or that chord? I don't think of anything.
You're hearing it in your head as you go. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I say, okay, well, that's where the chord is. I know where that is. So I developed a lot of the time where I could just write a song with no instrument at all. I'm just walking around and I'm just formulating it in my head. I can hear where it is.
It's interesting. I mean, I wish I could do that, and I know that I do it. Not that I'm a songwriter. I always struggled with writing songs, and yet at the same time, like you, I hear music I hear symphonies in my head. This wonderful music with me playing solo bass, and it's like Sinatra, and I hear it in my head, but I just can't quite get it out on paper. Or pick up my instrument or go to a piano and do it instantly. I wish that I could plug something into my brain and with a MIDI feed straight into my computer, and what was going on there just was spat out like a roll piano,
exactly.
All that stuff could just come out, and there it was on the screen. What I was hearing in my head, I hear the music, I hear the melody and the harmonies.
But when you play bass, like if I play you a brand new song and you pick up your instrument and you play,
I'm composing on the spot right there.
You are. This is what every musician does. I'm doing the same thing, but I'm doing it with maybe a bit more complex, where I'm bringing in harmonies, and I'm bringing in often even bass lines and everything. I can bring in.
Oh, of course,
I can hear it all. But I guess the only difference is that I can say, well, what I'm hearing is I hear what this bass could be, Roger. What do you think of this? And then at the same time, I can say to Beeb, this harmony part, or a guitarist, this is the melody maybe for the solo that you could base it on. It just is there, and I'm able just to connect across and possibly express it. But I think that ultimately, if you were to be a writer, you would have to desire to be it above all things. You see, songwriting was my number one thing. Yeah. You see, whereas players tend to want to be players.
Yeah, I think that was my desire as a young boy. I used to dream that the Beatles would come to New Zealand, which they did, and tour, and that George Harrison would get ill, and I would get the phone call to go and play guitar. I actually used to dream that. And so
that's good.
I think, I had that dream of being a pop star, the Mark Knopfler, money for nothing and your chicks for free. I think I've kind of fit into that mold initially. And you're talking about fate and being in the right place. Is it fate? Is it ordained, preordained, or just being in the right place at the right time? I mean, how I came about auditioning for LRB was an absolute fluke. It was a combination of me knowing someone and happening to go to that person who was a booking agent. And I had a cover band, and his name is Jeff Skews, actually,
Yeah,
who I'd met,
yeah.
and I kind of met him through touring with Godspell, and I met him in his band Skylight in Perth, and for some unknown reason, I remembered it. And so Jeff Skews has been a pivotal man in my life. And I go to see him, and briefly, it's this bizarre that I go to see him and go, have you got any work for my cover band? He said, no, look, we don't do cover bands. We only represent original artists. And then in the next breath, he said, but I'll tell you what, there's a band just come back from England called Mississippi. And I went, I know Mississippi, will I? That was the first song that came to mind, because that was a hit in New Zealand.
Yeah, yes.
And I said, oh, yeah, I remember that band. He said, well, look, they're auditioning. They've come back from England and they're auditioning bass players. I go, right, give me the address. Just like that. So at that point, my life changed, and I went home, threw my car in the combi, drove to Derek Polici's place, and walked into the sunroom, and there you guys were, you know. And I remember you saying, Roger, we've got this song called It's a Long Way There. And I remember, I don't think you sang the opening, I'm not sure, but I remember Beeb starting his guitar rhythm, and the band came in, and you just said, well, just play something and see what you come up with.
Yeah.
And the rest is history. It's like, well, I better play something, and I played what I played. And strange, and I'll be truthful here, because bass players are allowed to rip off other bass players and not dragged into court. But it reminded me of slight, it's a different rhythm, but it's the same key as Long Train Running.
Yeah, Doobie Brothers, yeah.
The G minor, and that's a faster, a dang-a-dack, gang-a-dack, whereas It's a Long Way There is a duck, 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 da 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 da.
A lot of upbeats.
Yes, but it's a funky rhythm with the chord structure, and I thought, well, I better play something, and I thought, well, maybe I'll play boom, 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 which is not unlike a slower version of Long Train Running.
Yeah, yeah.
So there you go.
But you see that line. I mean, I can't remember, but that. From the way I look at things, that would give you the gig for me, because to me, I'm looking for people that can provide something inspirational and something that I haven't heard before, that I felt is perfect for what the song needs. Yeah. This is what a wonderful and a great musician, which you are, can do. They can take your song and just give you just the perfect thing. If you're playing bass, I want the perfect line for this song. And you came up with it. And if you'd have come up with something else that was inappropriate, I can tell you now, you wouldn't have got the gig, because I would say, well, this person doesn't get what this is about.
The right guy for the job. Yeah, I remember talking to you outside after we'd played a few, and of course I was beside myself. I realised at that point that I was sitting in a room of some very talented musicians. I didn't really know the Twilights or Glenn Shorrock's history. You know, I didn't really know the history of, and the maturity and dare I say, the greatness. I was sitting in the room in the presence of, I mean, I realized pretty quickly, I went, wow, this drum is fantastic. And these guys can play guitar, and man, what about when they sing the harmony? Because I was into harmony. I was into the Eagles and Doobie Brothers. I loved those bands. And suddenly I realized I'm in a band of great, in a room of greatness. And at that point, I wanted the gig. And I can remember saying to you, we were talking outside after I had auditioned, and you said, look, there's one other person that we'd like to try. We need to get him down from Sydney. And I remember as a brash 21-year-old saying, no, Graeham, you don't want to do that. I really want the gig. And I just dropped that and left it there, and then packed my gear and went home. And, of course, I get the phone call where whatever it was I got. Somebody got in contact with me 24 hours later and said, you've got the gig.
Well, I'll tell you,
the rest is history.
The way that I've always been, the way I would have been then, I wouldn't intellectualize it. I would know that you are the right person at this time to have that position. It was the same as when I met my first wife and asked her to marry me after one day.
You kind of know, don't you?
I knew that was where that needed to happen. And so that's the way that I mean, I really believe in, if you like, it might be a bit far out for a lot of people, but I just believe in the spiritual guidance of mankind, which is happening, I believe, with the coronavirus. But the individual guidance of us all, in that we're placed in unbelievably coincidental situations where we meet the love of our life, or you join a little river band, or I went to England thinking I'm going to break Mississippi, but actually went there to meet Glenn Shorrock. You see, so you're the other side of the world. I needed to be going to meet the guy that was important for this little river band that I didn't even know would ever exist at that point. So, and I think that if we're honest with ourselves, whether it be the house we buy or the partner we meet or the incredible things that happen to us, and that not necessarily all turn out for the best, or all turn out with a lot of fun attached to it, but just the important events in our life, you think, well, wow, I just choose to
don't plan them as such, do you? Sometimes,
no, and I'm not saying I don't think it's just fate. That I think it's your destiny will come to meet you. I think your destiny will come to meet you, and I think that that's a real. That's what I think. I think that it's something that you've agreed to. It's not visited upon you without you agreeing to it. I think
so. You have to probably have your eyes open to it.
Well, you've got to be ready for it.
Open for it, yeah.
But I think that before you come to this world, you've really agreed. This is where your freedom in life is. You've agreed that at that time in your life you will have this opportunity, and when you either meet the person you're supposed to be or be in that band. But then your freedom is, well, you could say, well, no, I don't think I'll do this. I don't want to do this. Or you meet someone, and as I say, this is where your free will comes in. I'm not going to leave my marriage. I'm going to stay in this marriage. That's my free will to do that. So that we have got free will, but we have got a destiny that will try to manifest in our life. And if we miss it and we say, no, I don't want that, then what would have happened there, if you was meant to be there, okay, I would have said, no, I'm not going to do that. Bring this guy down from Sydney, get him in the band, and then he wouldn't work out, and think, oh, that Roger guy, he was pretty good. Maybe we'll give him a call again. So there's another chance, you see. So if your destiny is there to be in the band, you will be in the band.
Yeah.
You see, and that's the way I see.
Yeah, look, I obviously at the time, I wasn't going to get into this, but obviously I had my destiny was to be in a Little River Band. Absolutely. And at some point it was a destiny not to be a Little River Band. Yeah. Without going into, and it took me a long time to kind of get my head around that. And there was obviously a lot of soul searching and a lot of pain and disappointment.
Yeah.
But I think it's made me the musician that I am today. And,
are you kidding? Absolutely, it has.
Yeah, I think had I not found myself not being a Little River Band, I wouldn't have been the musician. I wouldn't have met David Jones and David Hirschfeld. I wouldn't have been in Pyramid. I wouldn't have met so many things I wouldn't have done, and I wouldn't. Your
greatest achievements as a musician have happened because of that.
Yeah, yeah.
And these are the hard things. I mean,
they are, yeah.
When you go through tough times, and as you say, you had a difficult time when you left the band. I had a difficult time when my wife left my marriage. I've been betrayed by so many people. I've been involved in so many difficult. I mean, even with the band at the moment, how we haven't got our name, how we lost all that.
Well, that's another story. That can of worms.
And that's not finished either. I mean, that's still running.
Yeah.
But the point is that had these events not happened, then all of the things that you do post that traumatic experience then wouldn't have happened either. But you see, if you're really honest, whenever there's a real difficulty in life, there's always a gift in it. But you often don't see it for 10 years.
Yeah. I didn't see it initially, yeah.
You can't see it because it's too hurtful. The ego is bruised.
Yeah.
There's so many issues that with this ego thing that we think that we deserve. but we don't deserve anything. And so our ego gets a hit on the head, and then we go away with our tail between our legs. But then someone like yourself has the integrity and the ability to then make an incredible success from that position of where you then went to. And it wouldn't have happened had, say, we all stayed together and made $1 squillion each. And
I don't think I'd be as happy as I am now. I wouldn't have met Dearsley.
Exactly.
You know, I wouldn't. And what was I going to say? I wouldn't have. Oh God! Try to come on, Roger. Hold that thought. Look, I've already said it. I wouldn't be the musician that I am today. You know. So I know what I was going to say. I think had I stayed in Little River Band and experienced the dizzy heights of success, I don't know that I would have survived, Graeme, between you and me. I think I might have died. I think I almost died there. I think I might have, you know. Who knows?
A good point, because there were excesses to the nth degree available in a very big successful band with just everything available,
everything supplied.
And I was fortunate that I was not interested in any of it. But for someone, I mean, between you and I, you were a lot more of a partying guy than I was.
Absolutely, yes.
And I think you would have, like a lot of other musicians, that may have led you down a different sort of path.
Very slippery slope, yeah.
Yes,
I actually think it might have. Reading Glenn's book Paper Paradise, there's a couple of chapters, couple of just things that he wrote about the things that were on tap or provided to you. You know, all the people, they all come out of the woodwork and they want to give you stuff because they want to be with you or be part of the success bubble, if you like. And I think I might have been tempted. I'll just leave it at that.
Well, and that's, but this is the infinite wisdom looking after you.
I've got it now.
What I'm saying. I said if we could just put our ego to one side as a person and as a people, and say, look, we're not that crash hot. There's an infinite. Why can't there be an infinite wisdom looking after us? I mean, if you have a child, you don't just let it run across the road. You hold its hand, saying you can't run across the road, or I'm not sending you to that school. I'm going to send you to this school over here. That's not good for you. Well, why is it that when you're an adult, why is it not possible that assistance in our life and our guidance, why can't it still be there? I personally believe it is. I've always believed it is. And to me, it's just self-evident. I mean, you don't have to believe one thing or another, but just look at your life, particularly when you get older, and think, good God, I could have jumped off that cliff, but someone grabbed me and said, no, go down this way, which is what happened to you. But it's happened to me also. And it happens to everyone. But nobody connects the dots.
Yeah. I wasn't connecting them back then, Graeme. It's probably.
No, but you're connecting it now.
Now I am. Yeah.
Many people go to their grave and they don't ever connect the dots.
Yeah. Yes. Very true.
That's all it's about.
Wow, this is a great conversation. I'm just sorry. I'm just looking down at my notes. You know, interesting enough, you know, talking about how hearing music, both you and I hear harmony and stuff in our heads. You know, whereas you've kind of gone the next step and written stuff and do it. And of course, and both you and I have done this without a formal musical education.
Yeah,
it's really interesting.
I mean, particularly what you did in Pyramid without being able to have that formal education. I mean, to me, that took your playing to like another level completely. And what an incredible! I mean, and here's an interesting thing. I mean, Pyramid was just one of the great bands ever. Like, it was just incredible. Yeah. But it's like a moment in time, and it just wasn't meant to be any more than that. But it was
magical. Absolutely. It was for me, it was like 3 years at Berkeley. 3 years of studying music
Yeah.
with both David Jones and David Hirschfeld, who were pretty young guys.
Yes.
They're a little bit younger than me, but they were just on fire, and they were what I call the young lions around town, and they knew no boundaries, and they were absolutely fearless on stage.
I know.
That was one of the things that I learned from playing with both David Jones and David Hirschfelder was relax, take a big deep breath, and trust in yourself, and also trust that the other three members in the band will support you no matter what notes you play. They will not be the wrong notes, and no matter what bass note you play, Roger, David would play a chord to make that bass note right. And that was one of the things I loved about Pyramid, was that, he would play a chord, and I realised that I could play, as Sting says, a chord is never a chord until the bass player decides what note to play.
What note to play.
Yeah. So you play a C chord, well, you play a C, but I can play a G. I could play all these other notes and make all these chords. And vice versa, you could play, I could play pedal a bass note, and Hirschfelder could play all these other chords over it. So between the two of us, we could actually never play anything that was wrong.
That's right. Louis Armstrong said there are no wrong notes. I mean,
I think a lot of the great Victor Wooten says that. When you take a solo, why do you have to start your solo on the root note?
Yeah.
Or he said, why don't you start your solo a semitone away? Yeah. Like the raised 9 or something, or the flat note, like one semitone away from the root, and that's your departure point.
With my harmony arranging, which is totally made up, there are many things in various songs that you would never write out as if you were a trained arranger, and clashes, with things semitone apart
semitones apart, but they work.
But they work. Even if you look at the harmonies that I did in Reminiscing, there's clashes in there, but it's a 5-part thing. But it just when they come together. But these are the things that.
But it's tension and release, isn't it? They're not long notes. It's like you get this tension, and you go, whoa, and then it releases and it takes you somewhere. It's just wonderful. I love that.
So just finishing on Pyramid, I loved when I saw you play. There were a time when you would, rather than say, well, now we're going to do a particular song, Blue Sea or some song, you would say, well, now we're just going to play. And so somebody would start.
A free group improvisation.
A free performance. And then that's something I could never do. I have no idea how you could ever do something like that. But it was incredible because you just say, well, okay, we're starting. Who's going to start? Okay, I'm going to start with a cymbal, or I'll start with a
melody, a little melody.
Then it just builds. And you're just pulling it in from the ethers. That is the ultimate creation. That's songwriting. That's what I do in my head.
Well, you're right.
What you guys did on stage. There were no wrong notes. You just play. It might be 3 minutes. It might be 20 minutes. You just play.
Yeah.
That was something that I had no understanding of how anybody could do that, because I had to work it through.
Right.
But now I see you're just doing collectively what I used to do with songwriting.
Well, it is. I realised that we were all songwriters on the spot. It's like, you're right. It taught me to be absolutely fearless on stage. So now when I'm in a group situation where I feel a shipwreck coming and somebody's forgotten where we are, as a bass player, because you actually are steering, you're driving the bus from the back seat. That's how I always describe bass playing. Even though the lead singer's out there, the lead guitarist, it's actually being directed back here by the bass player's calling the shots. Well, I like to think that anyway. Me and my importance. So you're right. And the thing I loved about Pyramid was it wasn't just a one chord blow for 20 minutes. No. We were going, and David was compound timing, changing rhythms, changing time signatures, going into new grooves, bouncing off, playing a triplet feel against a 4, but that triplet becoming the new tempo in a new groove, mid-song, and we all go, whoa, we're over here, confidently. It's a matter of doing it confidently, and as I say, trusting the other 3 musicians on stage. Sorry, I'm raving now, but I'm really passionate and excited about this.
That was the making of you as a player.
Oh, absolutely.
It probably contributed a lot to you as a person, but it had to come after the disappointment of leaving the band. That happened there, and then the gift emerges.
Yes,
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was it's fabulous. Anyway, that's enough about me. Look, we've spoken a lot about this. Has been a great rave. I'd like to. I'm just looking through my notes, and I know waiting for the inspiration. Yeah, I remembered another one of your songs. "Love is a feeling you can't hide."
No, that was Beeb's song.
Is that Beeb? Oh, I
Beeb
thought it was
wrote that.
yours.
Yeah.
My apologies.
That's okay, but that was one of that was the B side of maybe. Oh, what was the B
Yeah,
side?
love
One of
is
their
a
first two singles,
feeling.
maybe the B side of Emma or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I thought.
And that song will be we're going to be re-releasing and remastering some of our albums, and we're going to put that out as a bonus track. That one,
Yeah,
it's
right.
not available. Yeah.
Hey, what I'd like to talk about, touch on now, is actually now that you've written this great song, and I suspect that we were possibly playing it live before.
Oh no, we were. Do you know
studio.
that I found a recording of me singing it live, not Glenn.
Wow.
And you were on bass, so we would have been playing it live, and maybe I was doing the lead vocal in this pub gig somewhere.
Oh, is this a live pub gig or
No, live pub gig, yeah.
Well, you better send me across a copy of that. I
I
know
don't know.
Bieber's sent me a couple of things. He sent me the demos that we did in Channel 9 TCS Studios with Ian Mason, some of those. And he's also sent me a couple of live gigs at the Matthew Flinders. I think there was some live recordings done.
I think this was probably where this was
part of that, yeah. You better send me that as well, man.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, we're playing it live. Gee, I'd love to hear you singing it, but
it's not that.
It's not.
It doesn't compare with Glenn. It's Glenn's song. I mean, it's just.
Yeah.
I was sort of like that. Must have been very early days where I was singing a couple of things, and I just.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that you were saying something about we must have been playing it live. Yes, we had been playing it live.
Okay.
Yeah. Because don't forget, when we came back as and we started playing as Mississippi, there were 2 or 3 months we were playing gigs before we recorded that first album in the second half of '75.
Yeah.
But we were gigging before that, so we would have been doing like It's a Long Way There, and all those songs would have been done. But interestingly, Days on the Road was not on the first album. It was on the second.
No, exactly. It was on the second. Yeah. And obviously with Mississippi, you guys would have been playing It's a Long Way There
for 3 years.
Have you got any live recordings of that? I would love to hear someone else. I would love to hear someone else's interpretation or their bass lines, whether they're similar.
Like, you're on very solid ground there. I'll send them to you, but they're terrible. I mean, I can't listen to them, but I've got a tape, but not for publication.
Yes, look, and it would only be between you and me. Right?
Yeah.
So anyway, we're in the studio. We've had some success. We're in there recording the second album, which Beeb has some interesting feelings and comments to say about the recording of the After Hours album.
Yeah,
he felt it was actually a difficult and a dark time of the band, and at one point he said to me, "I'm surprised the band didn't break up after that album."
I would agree with that. Yeah,
and in my naiveness, I probably don't remember that so much. I remember maybe a little bit of niggle here and there about some things, but generally, I was probably, just kicking back and enjoying the time being in the studio, smoking joints with Glenn Shorrock in the vocal booth next door. Oh, did I say that?